Maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so you can become who you were meant to be in the first place.
Hi everybody, it's Rita here at M&A. So we are actually going to continue our thread of different topics for the summer to get you to think about your thinking. So today's topic is about triggers. Now for practical purposes, I'm going to define what a trigger is. So a trigger is an event, a circumstance, a smell that your mind actually interprets as a threat. So if you've ever heard the saying, the issue at hand is not really the issue at hand. So a lot of the times we go through life and we don't realize something is upsetting us, but most of the time, or some of the time, it has to do with an event or a circumstance that happened in the past. So you can be walking into a situation with your present self and something can trigger you, and you may jump back to your 7-year-old self, to your 16-year-old self, and you may not even know it. So I'm going to break it down in one more level and really just talk about how triggers can impact us at home, at work, and then how to support yourself. So a quick example, prior to pandemic, I went out to lunch with a friend of mine, and I walk into the restaurant and she says, "Hey, how was your morning?" or whatnot. And I said, "Oh, I actually, I got to sleep in this morning." And she makes the comment, "Oh, that must have been nice." So to the average person, that comment of, "Oh, must have been nice," doesn't mean anything. But to me, it triggered me. And partly is because in my household, growing up, being idle was not honored. We were a family that, got up at 4 a.m. and had 3 jobs and go. So sleeping in was considered being lazy. And here's the piece that I really want to break down for you. It wasn't the trigger itself that dysregulated me. It was the narrative that I attached to the trigger. So it wasn't the comment of, "Oh, it must be nice." It was the narrative that I attached to the comment, "Oh, I must be lazy." That is actually what caused me to be dysregulated. It caused me to leave the present moment and go into my brain. And all of you know what that means, where you you're almost shaming yourself. You're so in your brain and you keep ruminating and trying to fix it. And there's this level of urgency that happens. So the problem is that when you attach a narrative to the trigger and that gets you dysregulated, if you don't know how to pull yourself back to the present, you are taking action out of that dysregulated place. So in my case, I could have perhaps treated my friend disrespectfully because I might have been thinking in my head, well, she thinks I'm lazy, so I'm not going to be nice to her. Or I might even try the people-pleasing approach and try to prove to her through my conversation that, I did 8 things before I came here. So these types of things happen all throughout our day, right? We could be at work and someone sends us an email that has one line that potentially triggers us, and we attach a narrative and we fire back with a nasty email. So the question becomes, how do we actually support ourselves to get back into the present state of mind? And this is sometimes a problem because we don't always know what we're feeling or what has triggered us. So a couple of ways that you know that you are dysregulated is perhaps if you feel a level of urgency, right? You have to make yourself feel better instantly before you can go on to the next task. And you see that a lot, right? Like, I have to answer this email, otherwise I can't go on with the rest of my day. And then some of us, right, we stay in our head and we keep thinking about it over and over again. That's an indicator that you're dysregulated. And another way is scarcity, right? It is not going to work out. I can't believe this happened versus a feeling of abundance. So even when you know, right, I have this level of urgency, I'm feeling scarce in my mentality, or I'm in my head. So the question becomes, how do I actually know what are some of my triggers so that I can help support and label it so I can bring myself to the presence? So I'm going to actually put some of our triggers into bigger buckets so that it can become easier to label when you are in a situation. And I actually, for those of you who always want to take it to another level and learn more, I actually modified some of those trigger pieces from this book, Psychological Safety. There's a lot of good information here, especially to help support your businesses. So we're going to go over 4 trigger buckets. The first one is security. So security is really the need for predictability, commitment, consistency, and could be a big trigger point for some people. And here is the interesting part about this bucket. There are some people that are watching this that need a high level or sense of security in order not to be triggered. And there is a set of people out there that if there is too much structure, too much consistency, too much predictability, they become triggered. So there might be some people that are in a meeting that when someone goes off the agenda may actually become very triggered in that situation and feel, right, you're not sticking to the list. On the other hand, someone else might feel as though there should be variety and things should be switched up, and that might trigger them. So in either case, it's being able to say, right, my trigger point here is security, and to bring that to your attention. So number 2 is autonomy. And that's really being defined here as the feeling of control over one's environment or lack of control over choice. And here's what it could sound like, right? If someone is looking for less autonomy because they want to be told what to do, they may become triggered if the boss says, yeah, just go ahead and get that project done without giving more guidance. And someone else, if they want more autonomy and they have a boss that's a little bit more micromanaging, they might get frustrated or triggered because they just want to run with something. So number 3 trigger bucket can be fairness. So fairness is really in our perception of how we feel we're treated and how we feel others are treated. So there are some people that get very triggered when they think somebody else is getting better treatment than them. They may look at a handbook in an organization and feel like everybody should follow these rules, right? There isn't any wiggle room in this. And then on the other hand, there are some people that get triggered by everybody being treated the same or not providing some wiggle room when something that has happened that is out of the ordinary. And number 4 is esteem. So that really covers the view of ourselves and how we think about ourselves, and at times how we compare this to other people. So there are folks that become triggered when they don't actually receive accolades or a good job from their colleagues or even their boss. And some of that may sound like, well, I worked so hard, and do you think I even got a thank you, right? That's when you know you're not where you need to be in your brain. And on the other hand, there are some folks that actually get triggered from too many great job and your peers really thought you did a bang up job on this, and they would rather not have that. So ultimately, when you are in a situation that you find yourself triggered, whether it's your security, autonomy, fairness, or esteem, your next step is to really promote a safe sense of well-being. So many people think that when they are triggered, it's to problem solve, it's to get yourself out of it. But the reality is you can't do that until you're actually regulated in the right state of mind. So being able to breathe deep and say to yourself, gosh, I'm triggered right now, my security is triggered, my autonomy is triggered, and feeding truth to that will ultimately help your decision making. Because ultimately, when you are in the right state of mind, you'll actually be able to problem solve whatever the issue at hand really is, versus acting out your stuff through the situation. So the reality is when you make decisions from a true narrative versus a false narrative, you are in a place where you not only are supporting yourself, but you're capable to support others that are with you. I hope that helps. Until next time, emanate your best self.